When Camilla's convoy arrived at Windsor with empty black luggage, a royal guard was on duty. He stopped them, demanded verification, but instead of answers, he was threatened, made fun of, and instructed to be quiet. Hours later, the same cases came back out, this time heavy and full of things that weren't hers to take. That was when the guard went against the rules. He followed her to the airport, and just as Camila prepared to flee the country, he blocked her at the final gate. What happened after that? He took her bags, ripped them open in front of everyone, and the stuff that spilled on the floor shocked everyone in the terminal. Before we show you how this ended with King Charles, Prince William, and Princess Anne arriving in person, please make sure you are subscribed and have the bell turned on. Also, please leave a comment letting us know where you are watching from. What you're about to watch is the story of how one royal guard put everything on the line to stop a queen consort from leaving the nation. That dawn, the stone halls of Windsor were quiet in a peculiar way. Not the calm stillness of a ceremony, but something heavier that makes a man's shoulders stiffen up without him knowing why. Sergeant Marcus Dre had been walking these corridors for 17 years. He had learned to read stillness as a warning after 2 deployments in Kandahar, and this one didn't feel right. At 39, he had earned his job outside the legacy wing by hard work and blood, guarding the vault where Queen Elizabeth's most valuable heirlooms lay under crown seal. The rules here were not just ideas. Access required scheduling days in advance, getting several approvals, and paperwork that had to go through 3 desks before anyone could even touch a door handle. That's why his jaw went stiff when he heard the faint rumbling of engines coming up in the courtyard before morning. A line of black Range Rovers drove through the gates as if they owned them. The first door opened, and there she was, Queen Camilla, wearing a dark overcoat that made her look more like she was running away than visiting. Even though it was dark, she wore big sunglasses on her nose. Behind her, aides streamed out, struggling with empty black luggage that looked like they were made for international travel. Marcus walked forward and raised his hand in the proper way that he had learned over the past 20 years. "Please show me your ID and get out of here." One of the assistants, who was wearing a nice suit and had a diplomatic smile that didn't reach his eyes, barely looked at him. "We are expecting business at home," Marcus said, "not on my list," and then looked at Camilla. She didn't slow down or show him any respect. She only stopped long enough to tilt her head in his direction and speak in that tone that some people adopt when they want to remind you of your station. "Isn't it, Sergeant? I think we can get by without any ceremonial intrusion. Get out of the way." For ceremonial purposes, the word hit me like a slap. He had heard it all his life, that the guards in bearskins were simply monuments for tourists, props in someone else's performance. But here, in this place, ceremonial had a new meaning. It meant becoming the only thing that stood between history and the people who sought to change it. Protocol was still protocol. He moved a little, but stayed where he was. "Ma'am, you need to make an appointment to get inside the legacy wing. This convoy isn't on the list of those who can get in tonight." Her lips turned up in what may have been a smile, if there had been any warmth behind it. "After that, change your list. We won't be long." Just like that, her aides pushed by him, their luggage clattering over stones that had been there for hundreds of years. They went into the guarded wing with her. Marcus stayed at his place, his body stiff as a board. 10 minutes went by, then 20. The silence behind those strong doors seemed deeper and more wrong with each passing second. His training constantly said the same thing: if something goes missing, it's your fault. Marcus's hand was close to the security lock, but he told himself to wait and trust the system. But the minutes kept dragging on, and something deep inside him, the same instinct that had kept him alive in Helmand, screamed that waiting was the worst thing he could do. At last, he got off duty. He typed in his access code, waited for the hefty click, then pushed into the legacy wing. His boots made a quiet sound against the stone. The air in the vault was different, cooler, drier, and controlled to keep valuables that were older than countries safe. But tonight it was noisy, metal scraping, cloth zipping, and voices that were too low to hear. He moved slowly, with his hand close to the gun he never thought he would need in a place like this. He turned the corner and spotted them. 6 aides crouched over velvet display trays like kids on Christmas morning. Diamonds sparkled in the bright fluorescent light. Strings of pearls slipped into soft pockets. 2 men fought over an archival box, fitting it into the belly of a black suitcase with the kind of practiced ease that made it clear this wasn't their first time. Camila stood in the middle like a conductor commanding an orchestra. With her arms crossed and a scarf still over her neck, she watched her people work with the chilly patience of someone who has never been told no. Marcus stopped moving. His heart beat strongly once. Then 17 years of practice kicked in. "Stop what you're doing." The room became quiet. One aide dropped a tiara and almost dropped it. Camila turned slowly, and when their eyes connected, he saw something that made his heart stop. Not a surprise, not guilty, just annoyed that they were interrupted. "Sergeant Dre," she said, like a teacher who had caught a kid where he shouldn't have been. "You don't belong here." Marcus moved deeper inside and looked at the trays, the cases, and the methodical destruction of Queen Elizabeth's legacy. "These things are in the care of the government. You don't have permission to take them away." She pointed to the open cases like she was showing him pictures from her vacation. "This transfer was already approved. Reorganizing the house. Not your business. Where is the paperwork?" His voice had the sharpness it had gained in places where asking questions may mean the difference between life and death. "You need to sign a permission slip for each item that is taken out of this vault." "I don't see any." One of her assistants became angry and puffed up like a bird, attempting to look bigger. "Guard, you're out of line. You're ceremonial detail, not your inventory control." Again, the phrase ceremonial. Marcus felt his voice becoming harder in response. "I'm the one keeping an eye on everything, so if anything goes missing, it's my fault. I need to view those papers before I let any case leave this vault." Camila moved closer and spoke in a quiet voice so only he could hear. It felt like a menace since it was so close. "Do you really think I'd be here in person if this weren't allowed?" Marcus kept looking at her. He had fought terrorists in Afghanistan who had tried the same mind game, make the other person reject what they were seeing with their own eyes. "Then show me the permission." For the first time, something changed on her face. Irritation turned into real rage. Her hand shook like if she were trying to stop herself from doing something she would regret. The assistants behind her moved anxiously, their eyes darting between the mounds of riches and the soldier who wouldn't move. She snarled, "You're making a mistake, one that you can't take back." Marcus squared his shoulders, felt the familiar weight of obligations settle on them. It would be a mistake to let this go without getting the right clearance. "Not tonight, ma'am. Not without a written statement from the Crown." The quiet was like a wire that was about to break. The aides turned to her for help. She looked at him like she could break his will with her mind alone. But Marcus has seen worse things. He didn't even blink. The assistants stood still, their hands full with gems that they were waiting to load. Camilla waved them away with a flick of her fingers that strangely showed both power and disdain. "Step outside," she whispered softly, but the steel underlying made it apparent that this wasn't a plea. They all left one by one, leaving Marcus alone with the queen consort in the sparkling ruins of a king's existence. She let the quiet hang between them for a moment, before turning to him with a completely different look. The anger was still there, but it was now wrapped in something that might have seemed like charm if you weren't paying careful attention. She said, "Sergeant Dre," as if they were old friends. "You have done a good job, haven't you?" The Coldstream Guards. Was it Kandahar? She stopped for a while to let him know she had done her homework. People like him shouldn't waste their time babysitting dust and brass. Marcus didn't say anything. He kept his eyes on the black cases, where the heist was unfolding right in front of him. She moved closer and spoke in a whisper. "I could fix that. A promotion, a job in the home, and direct access to the groups where actual choices are made. A life far away from the barracks and the cameras of tourists. All you need is common sense." The offer hovered in the air like smoke. He could see it for a moment. The life she was painting, with respect instead of condescension and power instead of being treated like furniture in a uniform. A time when ceremonial meant more than just standing there while history happened around him. He finally answered, "You're asking me to betray the crown." Her smile didn't change. "I'm giving you a chance at a better future." The weight of her remarks filled the room. She might have been able to convince a weaker man, someone who was tired of being ignored, dismissed, and having his dedication termed ceremonial like it meant nothing. But Marcus's answer was flat and unyielding. "My future is already promised to the late queen and the king, not to anyone's own goals." The mask broke. Her eyes got hard, and her voice dropped to something that sounded more like a curse than a discussion. "If you cross me, you'll be sorry. Do you think Charles would protect you? Do you think Anne would be grateful? You will be ruined. You lost your job, not remembered." Men who never took a chance relayed a story over brandy to warn others. Marcus's jaw tightened, but he didn't look away. It's better to forget than to get involved. Her breath was harsh, like a laugh with no humor behind it. She turned back to the cases and ran her hands over the gems, as if they were already hers. "This can't be stopped. You don't have the power." He thought maybe not, but he had seen enough. Marcus took out his encrypted phone and typed quickly on the secure relay. Messages that were short and clipped flashed out into the night. "Breach of legacy. Taking away without permission. Intercept is in progress." The channel for Princess Anne flashed up green. Also Prince William's. Got the confirmation. He put the device in his pocket and aligned himself one last time. "You're right. I don't have power, but I do have eyes, and I'll see this through." Marcus turned and left the vault without waiting for her to answer. The echo of his boots sounded like the weight of a man who had just passed a line he couldn't come back from. The highway ahead looked like a struggle. Marcus pushed his car harder than any rule permitted for every mile between Windsor and Heathrow. His knuckles were white around the wheel, and his thoughts raced through everything that could go wrong. Behind him was a broken post, broken rules, and 17 years of perfect service thrown away in one choice. Camilla's convoy was ahead, possibly already going through Heathrow's special gates. Her aides were pushing the black cases toward a flight that would disappear into foreign airspace before anybody in charge understood what they had lost. He'd disobeyed every regulation, left his duty station without permission or support, and done things without permission. If he was wrong about what he saw, he would lose his job. If he was right, he might still have to pay for breaching the rules to stop it. But it wasn't his future that scared him. It was the sight of those cases, Queen Elizabeth's legacy fading piece by piece, like history being eaten up. His phone contained encrypted messages from both Prince William and Princess Anne. There were no instructions yet, just quiet. The kind of silence that meant his communications had gotten to them in the middle of the night and set off alarms all around the castle. But quiet wouldn't stop a plane from taxiing to take off. He saw them when he reached the top of the approach road, sleek Range Rovers driving under the exclusive umbrella of the Royal Terminal. The security officials let them through without asking any questions. The engines were already making a deep growl that echoed across the asphalt like a countdown to tragedy. Marcus swerved into a lane that was off limits, showed a confused barrier officer his credentials, and drove straight into the parking lot. He pulled the handbrake and ran, his heart racing. Inside, the terminal was buzzing with calm activity, ground workers refueling planes and attendants checking manifests. No one dared to question the Queen Consort. Camila went with measured grace toward the boarding corridor. Her assistants walked beside her, carrying hefty black boxes that carried fragments of the nation's history. Marcus cut across staff lanes, taking each step carefully but quickly, with his heart racing in his ears, past one checkpoint and then another. The guards honored his badge without knowing that he was carrying a storm with him. He could see everything plainly by the time he got to the glass wall that looked out over the jetway. Camila's guys pushing the bags toward the last scanner, the last gate before international seas. Marcus took a deep breath. This was it. Come in now. He wasn't just breaking the rules. He was going to break it in half, hold it back, and Elizabeth's legacy would be lost forever. He fixed his tunic, put the phone back in his pocket, and headed directly to the boarding gate. The shiny floor of Heathrow's Royal Terminal reflected the lights above. Everything was peaceful and efficient, too quiet for what was about to happen. Camilla's helpers were already at the last security scanner, which was a small hidden checkpoint right before the boarding tunnel. Most people do this every day, but for Marcus, it was the last line of defense between the late Queen's valuables and a one-way journey to Switzerland. He walked in front of the scanner and said firmly, "Those cases need to be checked." The attendants tripped because they were surprised by his abrupt arrival. The lead man got well immediately and waved a laminated exemption card around like it was a magic trick. Household Clause 7, Diplomatic Clearance. They don't follow the rules. Marcus didn't move. His voice had the same strong authority that he used when Taliban fighters sought to get past checkpoints in Helmand. Clause 7 doesn't apply to property that has a legacy mark on it. If you don't have anything to hide, let them through. The aide scoffed, trying to push the issue along. "Guard, stand down. You're making yourself seem bad." Marcus put out one arm to stop the conveyor belt, and his eyes were fixed on the case like a targeting mechanism. "Until they are cleared." The noise made Camilla move forward. She came out of her group like a general going to the front lines, her pearls shining against her dark scarf, and her face tight with barely controlled wrath. "What does this mean?" She lost it. "Protocol, ma'am," Marcus said without moving. "Before overseas shipping, every item with a crown symbol must be checked." Her eyes became very narrow. "I've already told you this once. These are personal things. Do you think you know more than your queen? Marcus didn't flinch as she looked at him. I think I should follow the law. The aides pushed on, angry and ready to fight. One said in a hiss, he's gone rogue. Take him away. Another person reached for the scanner's controls. Marcus reached for his radio. Take charge. Dre is this. He yelled into the device. Code red. Shut down the terminal. The effect was instantaneous and terrible. Heavy metal clicks sealed the magnetic doors, and the sound echoed through the room. The warning lights slowly started to strobe over the jetway. Outside on the tarmac, the stairs to board froze in the middle of the elevator. The ground personnel looked up in astonishment when the plane stopped. Nearby personnel gasped in shock. A queen consort and a single guard. The unthinkable had happened, and no one knew who had the power to stop it. Camila moved closer to him, her anger barely held back. You have the nerve to disgrace me, in front of the staff, in front of my own family. Marcus's answer was calm, even silent, but it hit the terminal like a hammer. I dare you to stop stealing our late queen's legacy. Right now, right here. The air got heavy, and everyone was watching the stalemate. The jet engines on one side snarled louder, getting impatient. On the other side, Marcus stood alone, barring the road with nothing but his pledge and 17 years of loyal service. Not one aide moved. No one on staff breathed. Everyone knew it was time. The terminal froze for a second. Aides holding onto the handles of suitcases and personnel stared wide-eyed. Camila's glare was so strong that it felt like she could make Marcus disappear. One of her guys tried to push by, and the stillness was broken. Marcus caught the handle halfway through the push. He responded, "That case stays," and pulled it toward him. Things got out of hand. Another helper lunged to pull it back. The luggage jerked between them like prey in a tug of war, and the wheels screamed on the glossy floor. Ground crew ran forward, not sure if they should help or run away. Camila's voice broke through the noise like glass breaking. Seize him. He has no control over himself. 2 police officers from Heathrow, called by the code red, ran through the shut doors before her people could follow orders. Everyone stop. One barked, with his hand hovering near his baton. The surprising appearance of real police made even Camila's group stop and think. Marcus did not. He ripped the suitcase free with a sharp twist that came from his fighting training. The assistants fell back, arms flapping. Marcus dropped the case on the scanner belt, discovered the latches, and pulled them open. The sound of metal clasps breaking was like gunfire. Then the spill happened. First, strings of pearls fell out, flowing over the edge of the conveyor like liquid starlight. A diamond tiara came next, sending broken light over the floor. A velvet packet ripped open, and inside were letters written in Queen Elizabeth's unmistakable handwriting. Some people gasped in horror, and the room was filled with quick breaths. There was no denying it now. The late Queen's personal belongings were strewn about the airport floor, not displayed in state chambers or safe vaults, but bundled like contraband inside suitcases. Everyone, including the cops, the personnel, and Camila herself, stared. Then the whispering started, low and scared. "Oh my God, is that the Queen's? How did they get?" Camila's face lost all color, but her rage became stronger and was aimed like a weapon at Marcus. "You stupid, careless person. You've sealed your own fate. You will be let go before the hour is up." Marcus stood tall, his chest rising and falling with each breath. Diamonds were scattered around him, catching the light like fallen stars. I'd rather be ignored than see history being stolen right in front of me. As staff immediately reached for their phones to record the scandal, they started to rise. Police at Heathrow yelled at people to put away their gadgets, trying to control what they couldn't, but the truth was out there. Everyone in that terminal had seen it. Just a moment earlier, Marcus seemed like a soldier who had gone too far, was dangerous, and had forgotten his position. He appeared like the only person who had been telling the truth as he stood over gems that looked like spilled treasure. The royal terminal looked like a crime scene. The officers quickly put the gems into trays coated with velvet. The letters that were strewn were put into secure envelopes with the same care that is shown for holy artifacts. The glass walls of a customs office were quickly covered with blinds, turning it into a makeshift locked room. Marcus stood inside like a lone guard, hands behind his back, watching over the valuables that had been found. He thought he would be in handcuffs by now, at least a court-martial, and maybe even a suspension while the investigation was going on. Instead, all of the officials stayed away, glancing at him with a mix of terror and unwilling respect. No one wanted to be in charge of a disaster that had just brought the monarchy into a scandal that could bring down governments. Then there was a noise from the tarmac. Convoys came in with the dull rumbling of official business, tires on asphalt, and engines idling. The blinds shook as headlights passed over the temporary room. King Charles was the first to come in. His overcoat was half-buttoned, as if he had gotten dressed in the dark. His face had creases that looked deeper than they had that morning. Prince William came next, his jaw set in stone, and his eyes already burning with the kind of wrath that could melt steel. Then Princess Anne walked in with the clipped precision of someone who wasn't there to argue but to make a final decision. All three halted at the door, taking in the scene. Trays of recovered gems on the desk, stacks of archival envelopes like evidence, and Marcus standing guard over bits of their family's history. Charles's voice sounded strained and hard to control. "Say more." Marcus sprang to attention. His report was clear and military. Unauthorized removal of sovereign property from Windsor's legacy wing intercepted at this terminal before international transport. Things that were shown to be hers after she died, tried to export without getting permission from the crown or the right paperwork. William looked down at the diamonds, and even in bright fluorescent light he could see his grandmother's tiaras and necklaces. His jaw was so tight that it looked like it hurt. He whispered, "Christ." More prayer than cursing. Anne walked over to the desk without saying anything, picked up one envelope and looked at the lettering on the cover. Her knuckles turned white. She said her mother's intimate letters, more to herself than to the room. Charles took a step closer and leaned against the desk to steady himself. He felt like he had been punched in the face when he saw his mother's treasures turned into contraband, and her history bundled into bags like stolen goods. For a moment, he couldn't speak at all. Then he stood up straight with a lot of effort. He said, in a voice that sounded like a king's, "Seal this terminal." There was no room for dispute. No press, no passengers, and no word exits these walls. This is now the Crown's business. To follow the rules, airport officials sealed off all exits and took staff members' gadgets. The royal terminal turned into an island that no one could get to. Anne's voice was as harsh as a knife. "Bring her in." The door opened once more. Camilla walked in, surrounded by aides and cops. She moved with the deliberate grace of someone who knew that every move was being observed and judged. She didn't have her sunglasses on anymore. Her face was pale but yet calm, and her chin was up in defiance. She looked at the treasures that had been found once, then turned her gaze to Charles as if to say, "Go ahead and say something." Marcus stayed still in his corner, watching history happen in real time. The room felt ready to blow up, with the truth spread out on the table between them like evidence waiting for a decision. The royal family was gathered in one room for the first time since Queen Elizabeth died. They weren't confronting foes from other countries or public controversy. They were facing treason from inside their own walls. It felt like a courthouse in the chamber, waiting for a decision. Marcus remained still next to the evidence. The recovered diamonds shone like witnesses in harsh light. Camila broke the stillness with the assurance of someone who has been winning debates for years just by being herself. Her voice was angry and accusatory. "This is crazy. A show put on by a guard who has no idea what his job is. Charles, tell them to stop this silly theater." But Charles didn't go to her. His eyes stayed on the sapphire tiara in front of him. The last time he saw it was on his mother's head at a Commonwealth banquet. His voice was soft as he spoke, but there was something about it that made everyone in the room listen attention. How did these leave Windsor, Camila? For a moment she paused, then stood up straighter. They were presents and things that belonged to them. Elizabeth presented these to me in private during the last few months of her life. The words were like a lit fuse in the air. Anne moved like a serpent that was about to strike. "Don't you dare." She walked up and threw a folder down on the table so forcefully that the jewelry shook. "Mother's own stock," the way she wrote. "Every item here is under the protection of the British sovereign and cannot leave British soil for any reason. You think that's a gift?" Camila's calmness broke down, and her rage showed through the regal veneer. "Anne, you've never respected me. From the start they didn't want me here. You have compared every step I take to Elizabeth's shadow. Even though I'm queen consort, people still regard me like an invader in my own home." William's voice was harsh and frigid, like the wind in winter. "Because you are an intruder. You tried to obliterate her memory and take away her legacy from history itself. Now we can see it clearly. You broke into her vault like a robber. The accusation hurt like a punch." Camila's face turned bright crimson, and years of anger finally came out. "I should get a legacy. Do you suppose I'll spend the rest of my life bowing to Elizabeth's ghost? Every picture, every jewel, and every word spoken in her name reminds me that I will never be good enough. These things were mine to take back control of, mine to wear, and mine to decide what happened to them. The remarks sounded like a confession, and even her own aides were shocked into silence. Charles's hand hit the table harder than anyone thought it would, causing the jewels that had been found bounce in their trays. His voice was full of years of anger that had been kept inside. Control. You would destroy my mother's memory to make monuments to your own pride. You make her name sound bad with every word. This was the first time Marcus had ever seen a real king. This man was fighting for his mother's dignity with raw, angry love. Anne leaned up close to Camilla and said, "Mother trusted us to protect what she built. You attempted to get it out like stolen goods tonight. Don't talk to me about respect when you don't deserve it anymore." Camilla's chin rose in angry defiance, but her words were little and bitter. "You think this guard is a hero. He is a soldier who is holding on to his duty because he has nothing else to live for, and you'll trust him over your queen." Everyone looked at Marcus. He didn't say anything or defend himself. He only stood up straighter, and every line of his body language said what words could never say. He chose duty when others chose greed, and honor when others chose theft. That quiet changed the balance of power like a scale, finally finding its true weight. Everyone in the room could feel that Camilla's anger was small compared to the moral authority of the crown that was against her. The quiet went on for so long that it felt like it could break. Charles then stood up straight, his face pale as parchment but set as stone. His voice had the weight of total authority. Enough. The one word felt like a gavel, decisive and not open to appeal. You won't be able to get into the legacy wing again. I can't see her privately, look at her things, or get into any of her property. His eyes were always on hers, but his voice was full of royal anger and the sadness of a son who had trusted the wrong person. You have converted privilege into betrayal. Camilla opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Around her, aides moved around awkwardly, feeling their boss lose influence in real time. Anne came forward and took charge with military efficiency. "These items will be catalogued right away and brought back to Windsor with armed guards. Sergeant Dre will be in charge of the chain of custody himself. He has to provide permission for everything to move." She nodded at Marcus, and the two of them had been professional friends for 20 years. "You stood firm when no one else would. You will keep clutching it. From now on, you will report directly to the royal household about all issues related to heritage security." William's voice was strong and clear as he said, "You saved more than jewelry tonight, Sergeant. You kept our family's heritage from being sold off in bits and pieces. That will never be forgotten." The words hit Marcus harder than any metal. He tilted his head in the same calm, dignified way he had all night. "Sir, I'm only doing my job." Camilla's hands were clenched at her sides, and she felt defiant, but she couldn't get it going again against the united front in front of her. At Anne's quiet signal, security guards stepped forward. She told them to take the queen consort to her home, in a voice that sounded like someone closing a file. "This issue is settled." As Camilla was carried out, her heels clicked a brittle cadence against the tile. The room appeared to let out years of suppressed breath. The valuables that were found sparkled coldly on their trays, reminding people of what had almost been lost forever. Charles turned to Marcus again, his voice lower now but full of royal thanks. "This will never be made public. It is still a family issue. But Sergeant, you should know that your name will be remembered in these walls for as long as they stand." Marcus bent his head in a modest way that showed respect. "Got it, Your Majesty." And with that, the pandemonium of the night turned into the kind of history that isn't written down but shapes all that comes after. The silent successes of individuals who chose duty over convenience, honor over progress, and the crown's heritage above their own goals.